When it comes to actually feeding my culture, I use tap water and a mixture of flours. So I have rye, whole wheat, and all-purpose flour. 10% rye, 5% whole wheat, 85% the rest in the all-purpose flour. And I don't really make a fuss too much about the specifics. I tend to, even though they're shown separately, the rye, stone ground whole wheat, stone ground rye, and our unbleached, unbromated all-purpose flour, I have them separately for illustrative purposes, but normally I just use one bucket and weigh it all out in one of these buckets. And again, to save myself some math, I do rounding as needed, just kind of rough guesstimates. So I'll tare my bucket. I'll go 50.5 is my number. Okay, so I need about 5 ounces of the rye, 2.5, and then I'll just fill the rest until I hit the 50.5. I don't actually weigh out or multiply to figure out exactly how much all-purpose, for example. So anyway, you have your flours. I'll go ahead and put them together, and then my equal amount by weight of water, and you have your culture. If you feed your culture probably, once a week, you bake once a week, you keep your culture in the fridge, it's probably fine to just feed it straight from the refrigerator. By that point, it's probably ready for it. I use the culture pretty regularly, and actually fed it last night before I closed shop. So it actually, and then it's been in the refrigerator, it actually doesn't need to be fed right now. So what I've done is I've weighed out what I'll use, and I'll cover the culture in this bowl and let it sit at room temperature and ferment for a few hours, 4 or 5 hours. By that point, it'll be time I'll go ahead and feed it then. But right now, it's kind of not. I guess it still has leftover dinner to gnaw on for breakfast and lunch. That being said, the temperature zones of everything is important. If you keep things in the refrigerator, it'll slow the the cellular rate down. The microorganism activity will slow down, and the food that you have given it will last longer. When you put the culture at room temperature, like I do right before usage, you'll probably need to feed it a lot more frequently, maybe every 8 or 10 to 12 hours if it's at room temperature, or even faster if it's 80 degrees in the kitchen. You might have to feed it every 6 hours if you were to just leave it there. So that's why you keep it in your refrigerator when not in use. That way you'll preserve kind of the organism activity without having to go through a whole bunch of flour and water to feed it all the time. Save you a bit of work too. So anyway, that's the general maintenance. When it comes to mixing things together, that's pretty standard. Add the water first, whisk it up really well, add your flour, whisk it up. I don't obsess about it, but I'm not a big fan of leaving huge clumps. I find that can be problematic when I go to mix into the final dough. That said, again, don't make too much of a fuss about it. Mix it up, weigh it out, put it back in the fridge, or leave it out on the counter if you're going to use it. All right, that's your mixing up the culture, feeding the culture.